Ah, not bad. Come on, Kenner. You can do better than that.
To be fair, of all the elite quarterbacks in the NFL, Joe Burrow is the least accomplished.
Getting better.
1,000,000%. I 1,000,000% believe that the Dayton Flyers are afraid of the Wright State Raiders. That's why they come up with every excuse in the book not to play them.
There it is. The hottest take of them all. It's the Justin Kenner Show, presented by Frickers, live on 1410 ESPN Radio.
The Reds are in the midst of a playoff fight. They are trying to get to the postseason, something they've only done 3 times in the last couple of decades. I'd say that the Reds are trending in the right direction, and it definitely helps when you get your ace back, and the Reds are going to get their ace back coming up later on tonight in Hunter Green. We welcome you in. It's the Justin Kenner Show, Dayton's ESPN Radio, 1410 Wing AM. The Justin Kenner Show, of course, presented by our friends over at Frickers. Frickers, your home for fun, food, sports, and spirits. We're going to talk about the Reds' fight in the playoff race as we sit here right now. A fight broke out at Bengals practice earlier today. The defense making some noise. The defense that doesn't have Trey Hendrickson, but their first-round pick, Shamar Stewart, doing something that you shouldn't do, and that's, well, get a little too physical with the quarterback. And who's to blame? Is it the bad offensive line? Or is it Shamar Stewart? Either way, fights and punches thrown at practice. We're going to talk about that coming up here around the corner. Ohio State, the Buckeyes preparing for Texas in their season opener, of course. Dave Biddle with Bucknuts. He's going to hang out with us as we open up the show coming up here in just a little bit. But I want to open up with some Reds talk. Cincinnati Reds back in action tonight. A weird 5:10 first pitch time. So we're only going to go about an hour, a little over an hour today. Before we hand it off to Tommy Thrall in the pregame for the Cincinnati Reds, of course. But the Reds tonight with Hunter Green on the mound, 5:10 the first pitch, 4:40 pregame coverage will take over. The Reds are 63-58, 5 games above 500. They get the big win last night. They have a run differential of plus 43. They actually have the second best run differential in the entire National League. Technically, from a run differential standpoint, the second best run differential team in the National League. I got a good kick out of this. Look, they have where are they? Plus 43, second most or second biggest run differential in baseball. How about the Rockies, guys and gals? Colorado Rockies, dead last in run differential. And I don't mean dead last in run differential like in the National League. I mean in all of Major League Baseball. Their run differential, okay? Let me put it to you this way. The White Sox are dead last in run differential in the American League. They're minus 73. Okay. And you look at the Boston Red Sox are plus 96 in the run differential department. I'm looking at the National League and baseball as a whole. The Colorado Rockies have a minus 327. 327. Minus 327 is their run differential. The Nationals, pretty bad as well. I really would be gasping at the Nationals if it wasn't for the Rockies doubling that. The Nationals are minus 149. Rockies minus 327. They've been outscored by their opponents this season by a combined 327 runs. Pretty surreal. You know, we talk about the Reds and the fact that their biggest weakness is their inconsistencies offensively, but yet they have the second best run differential of all the teams who are not sitting, of course, at the top of their divisions. You know, if you take a look at the team that's sitting atop the divisions in the National League, of course, you know, you have the Phillies, are plus 88. No surprise there. The Brewers are plus 152, and then the Dodgers are plus 81. But of all the teams in the National League wild card race, the Reds have the second best run differential behind the Cubs. The Cubs are on a free fall, by the way. I mean, a lot of the Reds' successes of late, honestly, has come from the fact that it's been a lot of teams around them who have fallen apart, right? Like you look at the fact that the Chicago Cubs, who were in complete control of the NL Central, it looked like it was going to have to be, if the Reds had any chance of winning the division, it would have to be to get through the Cubs. Now the Reds have to get through the Cubs just to finish second in the division, and I think it's pretty doable. The Cubs have lost back-to-back games. They've lost 6 of their last 10. They completely lost control of the NL Central. It was their division for the taking. They trail the Brewers by 7.5 games. The Brewers have won 11 straight. The Brewers might be the best team in the National League, and that includes teams like the Dodgers and others. The Dodgers are the most stacked, but the Brewers are just mowing through teams. 75-44, the Brew Crew's record over there in Milwaukee. The Dodgers 68-52. But the Dodgers are starting to slip a little bit. The Padres are taking off over in the West. The Padres are 68-52. The Dodgers are 68-52. Both teams tied for the top of the West. The Padres have won 4 straight. The Dodgers have lost 3 straight. They've lost 6 of their last 10. The Padres might jump out of the wild card race and just straight into the division race. And it might be the Dodgers sitting there in the wild card picture that the Reds are trailing currently right now. Back to the wild card picture, though, as we sit here today, the Reds 2 games out of a playoff spot. 63-58 is their record. They're looking up at the New York Mets, who finally got a win. They're 2-8 in their last 10. However, they put an end to their 7-game losing streak. The Padres are tied with the Dodgers for first place in the West, but right now, hold on, because of the tiebreaker in which the Dodgers possess, the Padres are sitting there in second in the wild card race, but they're one of the hottest teams in baseball right now. The Cubs, free falling, still sitting as the number 1 wild card team as we sit here right now at 67-51. Folks, this is wide open. The Cardinals are 4 games out of a playoff spot. They still have a shot, NL Central team. The Reds, NL Central, 2 games out. The Cubs sitting there at the top. I mean, the National League Central could potentially get 4 teams into the playoffs, which is absolutely insane because I don't think this division is that strong outside of the Brewers being a legit World Series contender. But the National League with so many teams plummeting, teams like the Giants, teams like, of course, the Mets, the Diamondbacks really never getting their footing, although they are 7-3 in their last 10, but they're 4 games under 500, 6.5 games out of a wild card spot. So when you get a guy like Hunter Green back today, that's big time for the Reds, who, although I want to be excited about getting Hunter Green back, I do have to say this. This really isn't about the pitching. Getting Hunter Green back is fantastic for morale purposes. You know, you've split the series so far with the Phillies. You're going for the series win tonight, 5-10 the first pitch. Hunter Green making his return. He's missed about 12 starts. But during the time that he's been out, I said this earlier, it's wild that he's the ace of this staff, but has his absence been felt? This isn't a shot at Hunter Green. This is the reality of it. I don't know what his return means for the Reds tonight. He's going to go out there, hopefully pitch a gem, pitch really well. And it's not as if we're going to watch it and say, man, that's what the Reds have been missing. The Reds have been getting that. Anything short of a quality outing tonight from Hunter Green is less than what we've already been getting from guys like Andrew Abbott, right? Like Nick Martinez has been fantastic in his starting opportunities. You know, Brady Singer's been great. Is this the best rotation in baseball? No, but it's one of the deepest pitching staffs in baseball, even with some of the deficiencies within the bullpen. I sit here tonight. Yes, I want to see a great outing from Hunter Green. The Reds need a great outing from Hunter Green. But what the Reds need to do is score runs. For the Reds to make the postseason, for the Reds to get to where they want to be, for the Reds to do what they need to do, they have to put runs up on the board. Because to me, getting Hunter Green back tonight, although it's great to see him back, don't get me wrong, I just don't know what it accomplishes. What is he going to do? What is he going to bring to this team that this team wasn't already getting? He could give up 1 run in 7 innings, throw 105 pitches tonight, and leave the game, and not one of us are going to say, man, the Reds have been missing that. It's nice to have it back, but the Reds haven't been missing it. They've been getting that. Andrew Abbott's been lights out. The Reds got a big loss with him on the mound the other night. Andrew Abbott has been phenomenal, and he's been reliable, most importantly. The Reds have gotten great pitching all season, and they're still so inconsistent that they continue to float in that 2.5, to sometimes a game and a half, to sometimes 3. They've just been sitting just on the outside of the playoff picture pretty much for the last 3 months because of the inconsistencies offensively. That's why I look at the run differential, the second best run differential of the teams fighting for a wild card spot, and it just doesn't that doesn't tell an accurate story. This team's problem has been offense all season. And we saw last night, offensively, you know, Andrew Abbott's game got wasted in game 1 against this Phillies team last night. Great, another great outing, but they put 6 runs up on the board, and they come away with a 6-1 victory over the Phillies in game 2. They got to do the same thing here tonight. Do I expect them to only give up 1 run tonight? No. 2-3 runs, but this offense needs to find a way to put up and produce 3 to 4 runs, and I think the Reds will be fine. They need this series. You got the hottest team in baseball coming to your ballpark starting on Friday night. You can't not take momentum into a division matchup in a division series like that against the hottest team in baseball coming off of a series loss, coming off of, honestly, you take 2 or 3 from the Cubs in Chicago. You should have been riding that momentum to dominating the Pirates, and you split that series. You drop this game tonight with the return of Hunter Green. I don't know what momentum you have. You head into an off day feeling like you haven't accomplished anything. The Reds lose tonight, and it's just, to me, I won't buy into them as a playoff team. They have to win this game tonight. They have to take this win and build momentum heading into this Brewers series, because I don't feel good about this Brewers series. And if your last 3 series, if they lose the Brewers series, your last 3 series now are a split with last place Pirates, losing at home against the Phillies, and then getting reminded just how bad you are compared to the top team in your division in the Brewers. The Reds have to find a way to get this win tonight, beat a good team in the Phillies, a division leader, by the way, and take momentum into Milwaukee. That's what I want to see. That's what I want to see when it's all said and done. The Reds Brewers, 5:10 the first pitch. Hunter Green making his return. Excited to see what happens here tonight. An update from Charlie Goldsmith regarding the Chase Burns topic that we've been spending a lot of time on this week. Terry Francona said he had a couple messages for Hunter Green and the pitching staff as a whole. His first message to Hunter Green, according to Charlie Goldsmith, was go as hard as you can tonight. If you get tired, let us know. Give us the best you can. Go as hard as you can for as long as you can tonight. Give us a good fight. Terry Francona wants to see, Hunter Green go as long as he can out there tonight while also not overdoing it at the same time. He did say that they are still deliberating as far as what the next step is for Chase Burns. What can we expect for the Reds as far as, at the end of the day, like when are we going to see Chase Burns next? When you look at the schedule, Hunter Green tonight, Nick Martinez, and Lytle are your next 3 pitchers. Right now, there is no Chase Burns scheduled moving forward. Hunter Green, Nick Martinez, Lytle, Abbott, Singer, and then back to Green. You look at the schedule came out tonight. They pushed it out. Chase Burns is no longer listed with an upcoming start. So now they're sitting back wondering what they're going to do with him. Are they going to shut him down, or is he going to make the move to the bullpen? Another update, Terry Francona says there's a lot going on. There's a lot of moving parts. He said there's a lot. We're not sure of Lodolo's day when he's coming. Things like that. There are things up in the air that we've communicated to the players, but we don't know. So keep that in mind as the Reds continue to fight for a playoff spot as we sit here in mid-August. Speaking of fights, things got a little chippy today with the Bengals' first-round pick, Shamar Stewart, as he made a little bit too much contact with the Golden Boy. Joe Burrow knocked him to the ground, and that led to a scuffle. Who was involved? Do you guys like seeing that type of intensity at Bengals camp and practice? We'll talk about that when we come back. Any thoughts on the Cincinnati Reds pitching situation? To me, like I said, Hunter Green coming back, love it. I just don't know what he brings back. I don't know. There's nothing he's going to do tonight that this Reds team has been missing. It all comes down to run production. Can they score runs? It's really going to come down to that. It's the Justin Kinder Show presented by Frickers. We'll talk Bengals. We'll come back. We also have Dave Biddle with Bucknuts, who's going to hang out with us coming up here in about 15 minutes as well. We'll be right back. Again, it's not often. It's not that it's not often. Zach Taylor usually does not go the route of throwing starters out there for a lot of time in the preseason, especially the likes of a Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, and their key weapons like that. Most importantly, though, we got to see a lot of good out of him, but most importantly, nobody got hurt at the end of the day.
Yeah, certainly not on offense. We'll see. It was a little concerning that Geno Stone, the starting safety, came out after 4 plays. Zach didn't address it last night, but we'll see where that stands. It might have just been some tightness and they were playing it safe. But, yeah, that's what you worry about. And even on the touchdown pass from Joe to Jamar, he took a hit, and it looked like Jeremiah Trotter kind of did like a respect thing and didn't. He could have hit Burrow a lot harder on that, but that's what Zach said. That's exactly why you play these guys. Joe wants to get hit. He wants to feel the game presence, and Zach maybe doesn't want him hit, but he wants him to feel the threat of being hit. You just don't get that in practice, and so it was. I mean, Burrow called it average, which I think is the greatest humble brag of all time. It was a really impressive performance.
With that, Zach Taylor talked about the importance of, kind of getting those guys out there. Why the difference in approach this preseason, this camp? I mean, I think I know the answer. I think we all know it, but just to throw it out there, is this simply because of the criticisms of the recent slow starts in recent years? Is this just an attempt to try something different? Why the sudden change in the approach to preseason?
Well, they were going to do this 2 years ago. They were planning on playing the guys in the preseason. It was something Joe had asked for, Ted Karras had asked for, and that was on the books. That was what they were going to do in 2023, and then Burrow has the calf injury, and that all goes out the window. And then, last year coming off the wrist, it's a combination of, yes, trying to do something different to get rid of whatever this slow start problem is, and also Joe Burrow's health. He's 100% healthy right now. This is the time to do it. You have a rookie that you're starting at left guard. You have a brand new right guard. He's a veteran in the NFL, but he's new to the team. You need those groups to be cohesive. It's not so much for Jamar and T and Gesicki and Chase Brown, the guys that have been here. It's for Joe because he hasn't done this a lot, and then it's for everybody else to play with Joe. It's not just about, if you see that performance and you're like, oh, great job by Joe. Let's get him out and not risk any injury the rest of the way. That's not what they want. They need this whole group together. To kind of, not just shake off the rest, but get used to each other, get used to real live game speed. But it's not like it's just a crazy pivot. This has been in the works. It just wasn't, I don't know. I don't want to say possible, but it just didn't make sense in the past with what Joe Burrow was going through, whether it was appendectomy or calf or wrist. There's just been something every training camp.
Yeah. And that's kind of been my biggest point that I've been driving home for a while now, is so many people make a lot about the slow starts. And sometimes I think we always try to act like there's some, mystery to it. And I don't think there's any mystery at all. All the things you just said to me are the explanations for the slow start. I don't think it's something that Zach Taylor or this coaching staff is doing or not doing. I think it's just been as simple as, hey, when Joe Burrow is healthy, or when he's not nursing an injury or not coming off of a season-ending injury or a surgery, he's pretty damn good. And when he's not pretty damn good and he's nursing those injuries, the Bengals aren't pretty good. So I think it's as simple as that. I always just laugh when people want to, what is Stephen A. Smith and others, what does Zach Taylor do? This isn't a Zach Taylor problem. It's if Joe Burrow is healthy, and he is right now, good things are coming for the Bengals and could be a very good September.
Yeah, and part of it's a mindset too. It's not just getting these guys snaps in the preseason. It's been kind of a country club atmosphere in OTAs, and we saw some more competitive drills this year in camp. It was 7-on-7. It wasn't 11-on-11, but it was good on good, and we haven't seen that a lot. And then in training camp, it has been ramped up, and they're not. It's not just the 11-on-11 competitive team periods. They're doing something every day, whether it's field goals at the end of practice or shooting baskets before practice. There's a competition every day, offense and defense. They're keeping score, and at the end of training camp, whichever team wins, the other team gets to skip all their meetings that night. And so it's just trying to light a little fire and make it a little more competitive and not make it dangerous where you're going at it so hard on the field. I think they're trying to find the best of both worlds here, because they are being smart about they're 2 days on, 1 day off. They are taking care of their bodies, trying to prevent the soft tissue injuries. You're seeing major injuries to major players all across the league, and it wasn't just coming out of last night's game. The Bengals have really avoided any of that so far.
All right, and we are back. It's the Justin Kinner Show presented by Frickers. Frickers, your home for fun, food, sports, and spirits. The Bengals have a preseason game against the Commanders coming up on Monday. And we've already talked about and for those who are watching live on YouTube and Facebook during the commercial break, just on the previously on the show clips that run, it was the clip from Jay Morrison, Bengals writer, who we had on earlier in the week, talking about just the change in approach that the Bengals have had, Zach Taylor's, to preseason playing starters. Just to try to get a little bit more fight in this team, try to get a little bit, more oomph in this team, if you will, to get off to a hot start. 1-3 starts in back-to-back years where they have missed the playoffs and ultimately found themselves trying to dig themselves out of a hole. And you could say, well, the injury to Joe Burrow years ago is why it happened. They finished with the 500 record when Joe Burrow left. That team was still winning football games. You win one more game in September 2 years ago, even without Joe Burrow, you're still in the playoff. Last year, the Cincinnati Bengals, 1-3 start in the first month of the season. You could, that's important. Like you missed the play. You won 9-8. You win one more of those. Games in September. You're in the playoffs. So, is what it is at this point. But the one thing is that there seems to be a little bit more fight and chippiness during practice, and it's coming from the defensive side of the ball. But here's the thing about the Bengals that's interesting. Is what is the right approach? Like, how do you guys, when you guys are following coverage of your team during camp, what's your takeaway? Like, what's your opinion? Like, so for instance, today, it sounds like there was a big scuffle at Bengals camp. There was a big fight between Lucas Patrick and Shamar Stewart. Joe Burrow struggled mightily today at camp. The offense did. Now, the offensive line's pretty banged up. No Orlando Brown Jr. And look, that's an offensive line that's pretty dang bad, even when they're out there. Okay. Now, when you have a bad offensive line, that's pretty bad. And then you have the backups to the bad offensive line, I'm sure it gets even worse. So Shamar Stewart and the defensive line today had a very big day. And Shamar Stewart, a little too aggressive, fighting through pressure and ends up making contact with Burrow. The video that's floating around follows the ball and follows the pass out of Burrow's hands. So you don't see contact being made on Joe Burrow, but you do see Shamar Stewart just ripping through the blocks. And the next thing you know, you see Burrow on the ground, and then there's fists being thrown, punches being thrown, Lucas Patrick, Shamar Stewart, a big blow up there. So what do you guys make of that? For one, Shamar Stewart's not trying to knock Joe Burrow to the ground, but he's trying to work like hell to get to the quarterback, which is, guess what you want. It's exactly what you want. The Bengals have had the sack leader. They had this NFL sack leader from last year, throwing a temper tantrum, not fighting, not practicing, not being there for his teammates, crying because the contract that he agreed to and signed isn't good enough. So he's throwing a temper tantrum, not showing up. I think this is what you want. You know that the offensive line's bad. So are you happy about the intensity of the defense getting to the quarterback? Or are you concerned because, man, that offensive line's pretty bad again? Like, the Bengals are an interesting unit. Their defense isn't good, and their offensive line isn't good either. So when you read reports that, okay, the offensive line looks very much improved during camp, when you hear that from time to time, it's, yeah, well, look at the defensive line that they're going up against, a defensive line that does not have Trey Hendrickson. And then when you read reports and hear that, man, the defensive line just ate today, the defense must be good, right? That, or are you going up against a bad offensive line in practice that didn't even have Orlando Brown Jr.? I don't know. I never know what to make of it. But I thought that was interesting. I like when teams have these little dust-ups. I like when teams have these little flare-ups during camp and practice. I think it's good and healthy. You're going up against the same guys every single day. It's hot and muggy. I mean, it's humid as can be out. You're ticked off. You're going up against the same bodies every day. You're weeks into this thing now, and you're weeks away still. Like, this is probably the most brutal time at camp would be my guess. I'm not a former NFL player, but you would have to think the first week's pretty fun. You get through the off season. You're finally back at camp. You're with your guys. You're with your teammates. And you get that first preseason game. But then this is the week and next week where it's like, okay, we're tired. Same guys every day. We're sick of seeing that same person across from us. We're tired of having coaches yell at us. it doesn't surprise me that this is around the time where you start to see these dust-ups happen. But a lot of times you're hearing about reports of fights breaking out, when you have these joint practices that are going on. So who knows? But interesting day at Bengals camp nonetheless as they prepare for their second preseason game against the Commanders coming up on Monday. Interesting day at Browns camp. Shedeur Sanders suffers a oblique injury early on in joint practice against the Philadelphia Eagles. So he balled out in his first preseason game, 130-plus yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. Everyone upset that he's not getting the, the push as far as the first team reps are concerned. But as great as he was in the first preseason game, we will not see him in preseason game number 2 against the Commanders. Against the Eagles. Coming up on Saturday. Dylan Gabriel, though, has been battling a hamstring issue. Kenny Pickett's been battling a hamstring issue. They've been taking old man River, Joe Flacco, surrounding him in bubble wrap, hoping he doesn't get hurt. So this has been an interesting camp nonetheless. By the way, got an update on Deshaun Watson. He's starting to pick up a lot of his workouts. He's running and sprinting in full motion now. He will be healthy at some point this season, and then the Browns have a fully guaranteed problem. Are they going to not even adjust the quarterback depth chart when they get their fully guaranteed, really expensive quarterback back that's been really bad since they've signed him? I mean, this Browns team, they may not be very good this year, but damn it, they're going to be entertaining. They're going to be interesting, and that's all you can ask for. Speaking of interesting, the Ohio State Buckeyes, they kick off the season on August 30th against the Texas Longhorns. We're going to talk about the Buckeyes quarterback battle and something to consider. When you have a quarterback battle like this, you're going to debut your quarterback against a tough opponent like Texas. You would like to have a run game that you can count on and rely on. But the Buckeyes are going to be, of course, debuting 2 new running backs as well. New running backs, new quarterbacks, number 1 team in the country. That's baptism by fire right there. We're going to talk about that. Dave Biddle, bucknuts.com. He's going to hang out with us when we come back. It's the Justin Kinner Show presented by Frickers. We got Deron Holmes with us here in studio. Justin Kinner Show, Dayton's ESPN Radio, 1410 Wing AM. Speaking of Dayton, you mentioned Obi Toppin. You didn't get to play with Obi, but he has his camp going on. You're going to be a part of that this week as well. But how cool was that? How surreal was that again? And you're close and friends with a lot of guys. He's a close friend, of course, but seeing another former Flyer not just be in the league, but be an integral part of a team that made it to the finals. How much is that just a driving force behind? I mean, you're a very motivated guy to begin with, but how cool was that seeing a guy that played where you did in college and is fresh with putting guys in the league now, but now you're starting to see some of these guys blossom a bit. We'll talk about Kamara in a moment. Yeah. Love Kamara. But how cool was that seeing Obi just kind of take off in the playoffs and the NBA Finals the way he did with the Pacers?
Yeah, I think it was amazing. Like I was telling the coaches, I was just talking with them earlier, just to see what he did. I think New York, they kind of had him in a shell. So when he was able to get to Indiana, he's able to play his full game. It looks like he's more comfortable, kind of like how he was playing at Dayton. He can showcase all of his skills. So he's been killing. I thought he was a very critical piece in that Indiana team, especially in the finals. Yeah. You can easily see it. So just what he's doing is putting on for all the other kids that are coming out of Dayton. So it's just very, very inspiring to see him. Ain't no stopping topping for a reason. He's like that. He's like that.
Tumani Kamara, taken in the second round. Not really sure what to expect with him in the league. Obviously, the build was there. All the draft reports come back, and a lot of teams excited about him. But Portland obviously hasn't been a good team the last couple of years, so that provides an opportunity for him to go out there and get a lot of minutes. And not just what we saw from him at Dayton. He's blossomed. Came into his body a little bit too. I mean, guy's been unbelievable, and it's not just Obi dominating in the league right now. He's having a very fun run right now as well. How unique has that been? Because you got to play with him, obviously, and to see his career take off the way it has.
Yeah, he's doing a lot of the things. And I remember when Coach Grant told us when he first went into the league, he said that Samani was going to have a great, career because of the things he does. His intangibles are already so good, especially on defense. He's so locked in on being that guy to guard 94 feet. He hustles. He plays very hard. And then the other things always are going to come. So, he's doing that stuff with Portland. He's setting that tone. He does it all the time. When we played them, he was one of the main guys that we're like, man, this guy's all over the place. So, just seeing that is showing how much he really wants it, and it's amazing. I think that he got snubbed the defensive teams. I thought he should have been on there, but his career is going to be amazing. If he keeps playing the way he is, I think he can make it to be an all-star.
Your role with Denver this year, obviously last year getting hurt so early, not really, I'm sure not very clear what your role would have been. Obviously there was slots open. You were going to get some minutes, but what's your role looking like for the Nuggets this coming up season? Again, they had an interesting off season. There was a lot of stuff floating around out there. What direction does Denver go in? Kamara got a huge opportunity playing on a team that didn't have a direction, that they're, rebuilding team. You're not on a rebuilding team. You're on a team that has championship expectations. So there's more pressure on you to have to go out there and perform. Right. Have you talked with the coaches? What's your role? What's your expectation?
I haven't talked too much with the coaches about it, but I kind of already know what to expect with this team. This is a team, like you just said, we're not a team that's coming out and we're all new guys. This is a team with a bunch of veterans, a bunch of guys that some of these guys have already won championships before. And then we got other veterans that have been in the league for 7+ years, and their third string guys are vets. So we got a lot of vets, so my role is to go out there, do what I can, showcase my talent, and help win games, whether it's a lot of minutes, whether it's not the most minutes, but understanding on this team, you got to be able to play that role and do what you can with the time you get and then make the most of it. Even if you play well in practices and training camp, that doesn't guarantee that you're going to get a lot of minutes, especially as a young cat on the team like the team I'm on. So it's just being patient with that stuff.
What is it? 7 straight years now, a different champion's been crowned.
Yeah.
In the NBA, I feel like in the 2000s, it was like the dynasty era where you had the Spurs and the Lakers. Lakers technically, had 2 dynasties in that decade. Then you had the super team era in the 2010s, and now it's like the parity era right now, where it just feels like every year a different team is winning a championship. I think that, from a fan, you could argue ratings all you want, whether it's good for ratings or not. But from a player perspective, it's like now you have the majority of the league who constantly feels like, man, we have a shot this year. This isn't, the next 10 years, it's all LeBron and the Lakers or the Heat and the Spurs, whatever. How cool is that? I mean, seeing so many different teams and makeup of teams have that opportunity.
It's really showing the talent that's coming into the NBA. I think that's why they need to start looking into expansion teams because of.
We got Deron Holmes with us here in studio. Justin Kinner Show, Dayton's ESPN Radio, 1410 Wing AM. Speaking of Dayton, you mentioned Obi Toppin. You didn't get to play with Obi, but he has his camp going on. You're going to be a part of that this week as well. But how cool was that? How surreal was that again? And you're close and friends with a lot of guys. He's a close friend, of course, but seeing another former Flyer not just be in the league, but be an integral part of a team that made it to the finals. How much is that just the driving force behind? I mean, you're a very motivated guy to begin with, but how cool was that? Seeing a guy that played where you did in college and is fresh with putting guys in the league now, but now you're starting to see some of these guys blossom a bit. We'll talk about Kamara in a moment. Love Kamara. But how cool was that seeing Obi just kind of take off in the playoffs and the NBA Finals the way he did with the Pacers?
Yeah, I think it was amazing. Like I was telling the coaches, I was just talking with them earlier, just to see what he did. I think at New York, they kind of had him in a shell. So when he was able to get to Indiana, he's able to play his full game. It looks like he's more comfortable, kind of like how he was playing at Dayton. He can showcase all of his skills. So he's been killing. I thought he was a very critical piece in that Indiana team, especially in the finals. You can easily see it. So just what he's doing is.
All right, and we are back. It's the Justin Kinner Show, Dayton's ESPN Radio, 1410 Wing AM. Let's continue on talking more college football, more Ohio State Buckeyes, of course, and I can think of no better person to bring on the show to help talk all things Ohio State Buckeyes, our good friend Dave Biddle. Dave, how are you? It's been a while.
Justin, great to see you. And yeah, man, it has been a while, and our Reds are still in it, and now we're beginning Buckeye football. It's a great time of the year.
Yeah, we were talking before we went live. I'm like, I don't know. I think I've been doing this for about over a decade. I've never actually been able to talk about meaningful Reds baseball this deep into the season. Usually it's just all Buckeyes at this point with Bengals and Browns. So it's a new twist. I'm enjoying it, to say the least. Hopefully they don't rip our hearts out, though. So they have a habit of doing that. So
Sure do. It's nice having a Hall of Fame manager in this young core. And it's nice that they, even though they didn't do anything crazy, it's nice to see them add pieces at the break or at the deadline. So, yeah, we'll see if Tito can push them over the goal line, so to speak.
You an old school guy when it comes to like managers in baseball. Like I think Terry Francona is that perfect mix. He welcomes a little of the new analytical ways, of course, but also still sticks to his old school guns. Do you like that, or do you like the full on analytical approach?
I like exactly what Tito does, because I don't think you can't ignore analytics. I think that'd be burying your head in the sand. But I do feel like sometimes you got to go with your gut. I think he does a really good job of that. I mean, there's a reason we're talking about a future Hall of Fame manager here. So, yeah, man, we'll see if they can keep it going.
All right, let's talk a little Buckeyes. I want to start right off with the QB battle. Look, so much is being made, obviously, about Texas and the debut of their new quarterback in Arch Manning, but Ohio State's going to be debuting a new quarterback as well. What should we be taking away about this ongoing QB battle? I think everyone feels like it's Julian Saint's job, but the longer we go into camp and just the mixed reports that come out, what are you seeing? What are you hearing? What should we make of this QB battle going on right now in Columbus?
Yeah, I'll be shocked if Julian Saint's not the starter when they tried out there against Texas. I mean, you hear what like Jeremiah Smith said about Julian. There was a piece in The Athletic, if not last month, maybe late June, when he was down in Miami, and they talked to him, and he just gushed about Julian like he's the guy. And everybody says the same thing about Lincoln Kienholz, and I've seen this. They feel like if he needs to get the job done, they feel like he can, and he does. He's looked good during camp, but even the guys at the combine, Justin, the guys, like Will Howard and Emeka Egbuka, on and on and on, we're all saying the exact same thing. Donovan Jackson, they're like, yeah, Julian's the guy. Lincoln can get the job done, but Julian's the guy. So it's like they kind of were able to let their hair down a little bit and give their true feelings. So you couple that, with what Jeremiah Smith said, and everything else, and the fact that Julian Saint it's not just he was the number one quarterback in the country in the 2024 class now entering his second year. He was handpicked by Nick Saban and Ryan Day. Picked Nick Saban initially, then Nick Saban retired. He was at Alabama, a week longer than you and I were, and then came to Ohio State. So, yeah, man, and he's got Julian Saint. I think there's going to be ups and downs. There's no doubt, assuming he wins the job. I mean, no doubt about it, there's going to be ups and downs as a redshirt freshman. But he does have some special qualities as far as his quick release, his accuracy. But he's not a big guy. But he's not as small as I think as some people think. He's every bit of 6'1". He says he's bulked up to 210. But still, I mean, how much is he going to be able to run the ball? Because Ohio State having that threat at the quarterback with the Q run last year was big with Will Howard. They were really good in short yardage and goal line. The previous year, they had no threat at running with Kyle McCord, and they were one of the worst teams in the country, Justin, short yardage and red zone. So I think Julian's going to be somewhere in between there. It's going to be closer to Will or closer to Kyle as a runner. We shall see, but I do think he'll be the starter, yes.
When you're going to debut a new QB, of course, it's always a little bit more beneficial when you have a veteran group of running backs. If you can lean into the run game early as the QB gets acclimated. But Ohio State, they don't have that luxury. No one feels bad because of all the weapons they have, but they're going to be debuting new running backs and a new quarterback. When you're trying to balance how to, of course, spreading out the pressure, if you will, how's Ryan Day? How's Ohio State going to approach that? When you want to take the pressure off your quarterback, you want to lean into the run game, but you also don't know what you have with your running backs as far as how they're going to handle a team like Texas. How's the run game battle going on right now, and how do you see that playing a role with youth and inexperience at both key positions, quarterback and running back?
Yeah, they obviously lost a great tandem. The best running back tandem that I've seen during my time following Ohio State, both, as a little kid, as a fan growing up, and then my many years on the beat. I missed Archie and Pete. That's probably the gold standard, I would think. Pete Johnson, Archie Griffin, probably the gold standard, probably, definitely. But Keith Byers would say that 84 tandem was good. There's a great, I know you're friends with Keith, there's a great Keith Byers story. John Woolridge was telling Tim May that Keith Byers and John Woolridge are the best running back tandem ever at Ohio State. And Tim May said to John Woolridge, that was a really great tandem. I think that was mostly Keith and not you. So great story. Just guys yucking it up. But seriously, that's the best that I've seen when you're talking about two guys that were early second-round picks, both went over 1,000 yards. Fantastic. That being said, Justin, you talk to anybody over there and even off the record and, not like when they're doing have a scrum of 50 reporters around, but you talk to some of the guys out there, they're bullish on this running back room with James Peoples, coming. He was the number 3 tailback last year, and they liked him as a true freshman last year. It's just Quinshawn and Travion stayed healthy the entire year, so he didn't play that much. But they liked him as that number 3 back last year. Then you bring in C.J. Donaldson, which was a good get for a variety of reasons. Number one, and most importantly, he's just a good back, big back, and he gives them a veteran presence in an otherwise very green room. He had a little over 2,000 rushing yards, and he had 30 touchdowns during his career at West Virginia. Now coming here as a senior, gives them some experience there. And I think it'll be James Peoples, then C.J. Donaldson, kind of 1A, 1B, similar to what they did last year. And then I think Bo Jackson, the true freshman, I think he's going to get a decent amount of playing time. Now, if both of the top guys stay healthy like they did last year, which is pretty rare, he might not play that much, but when those guys gets banged up, they really like Bo Jackson, the true freshman from Cleveland. So, man, despite losing a fantastic tandem, they're actually, pretty encouraged by Carlos Loughlin's running back room.
How about Loughlin too? He's a lot of people big fans of his. I mean, I know he got everyone's attention with that media scrum the other day that you were mentioning earlier, but he seems to have everyone buying into that running back room, no doubt.
Yeah, he's hilarious. He's just must-watch TV, must-see TV, or must-watch YouTube, whatever it might be. He's hilarious, and it's real. It's not he's not like fishing for to try and sound good at like press conferences. Like he'll say things like, "Well, Turbo Rogers is one of their freshman running backs, and I think he looks good out there." And this is the kid that Loughlin had been recruiting. So they're both from Alabama. He'd been recruiting him since he was like 14 years old. So he's known this kid a long time. And his real name is Anthony Rogers, but he goes by Turbo Rogers, one of the top running back recruits in the country. Some people think he's more of like a slot guy, but he's in Carlos Loughlin's room. Carlos Loughlin's talking about him the other day. He's like, well, they call him Turbo. I think he's more of a Buick. More of a Buick, not a Turbo. And I'm like, now my first car was a Buick Century, so that hit close to home. Hey, close to home, Justin. But it's stuff like that, nicknaming him Buick instead of Turbo. Loughlin is awesome. I think he's done a great job with the running backs. The proof's in the pudding. Had a lot of talent to deal with last year, but I thought he developed Travion even more. Travion had his best year last year, and Quinshawn, and we'll see this year. But yeah, Carlos Loughlin I think he's a great running backs coach, and he's one of those guys in the media. It's like if he's coming out, we have to have microphones near him at all time and hear everything that he says.
Dave Biddle, Bucknuts with us here again, the Justin Kinner Show, 1410 ESPN Radio. The Justin Kinner Show presented by our friends over at Frickers. Frickers, your home for fun, food, sports, and spirits. Jeremiah Smith, I don't understand how Ohio State, when we were talking about Marvin Harrison Jr., it just seemed like there's like Ohio State, and by the way, beyond fortunate to have him, but you're not going to get much better than that. And then along comes Jeremiah Smith. I mean, this is a generational talent, no doubt. What kind of leap, what kind of jump can he make from his freshman national championship season to this year? Obviously, you playing with Will Howard, an experienced quarterback last year, to an inexperienced quarterback this year. As a sophomore, how big of a leap can he make playing with an inexperienced quarterback? How do you see him jumping from his freshman season to this year?
Yeah, he says he's stronger. He said he's added about 8 pounds, and he's faster. This kid just works his butt off, man. Like we're like, what are you most proud about? He's like, that I can do like 25 bench reps of 225 pounds. He lifts like he's like an offensive lineman or something at the combine. So I don't know. I mean, you feel like you get the feeling watching him last year. It's like, can he really get much better? Can he just sustain this? Because he wouldn't have been the first time we've seen a true freshman come to Ohio State and have a great true freshman year. Maybe not, like Andy Katzenmoyer. Don't tell him I said this because he would just kill me with if he flicked me probably. But Andy Katzenmoyer came in like gangbusters, and Andy Katzenmoyer was still very good as a sophomore and a junior. Did he improve that much though? And we've seen it. There's other examples you can talk about. So it's not a foregone conclusion. It's not everything's linear, I guess is my point. With Jeremiah Smith, man, it's going to be hard to imagine him not being at least a little better when he's telling you, yeah, I've added about 8 pounds, 10 pounds. I'm stronger and I'm faster. And he's got this year of experience under his belt. But like you said, redshirt freshman quarterback, not fifth-year senior. And I know Will Howard wasn't at 5-star and all that, but especially by the end of that season, Will Howard is playing some really, really good football. That Will Howard as a fifth-year senior was not Will Howard as a sophomore at Kansas State. So as we talked about, there's going to be ups and downs, and that could hurt Jeremiah a little bit. But Julian is an accurate passer, so I think he will improve on his stats from last year, but which is crazy to say if he stays healthy. It's another thing. They played in 16 games. They're not guaranteed to play in 16 games, obviously. He's not guaranteed to stay healthy, but if they do play in a lot of games, he stays healthy. I think he's going to barely top his numbers from last year, which were very, very impressive because they do want to run the ball. They like their offensive line. There's more shuffling on the offensive line than I expected. but they like their offensive line. But you got to get the ball to Carnell Tate as well, and Brandon Ennis and Max Clare. So, yeah, I mean, it almost was like with Marvin. And you made a great point, Justin. That, yeah, it was like 2-3 years ago. Like, is Marvin Harrison Jr. the best receiver to ever come through here? And then he leaves, number 6 overall pick of the draft, or number 4, whatever he was. And then boom, Jeremiah comes in. We're like, he's the best one to ever come through here. Chris Carter's like, don't forget about me, guys. We're not Chris, but yeah, man, I think he will be better. But as far as his stats, I think they'll be a little bit better. Yeah.
Defense. Look, I just give opinions on the stuff I read, so I rely on a lot of the work of what guys like you do. What the hell happened with Jim Knowles? What was that? Like that drama? That wasn't something that just peaked in late in the season, right? Was that something that they were having to overcome throughout the season? From your point of view, what happened with that? Luckily, I mean, they still won a national championship. Defense played great. They played obviously a ginormous role in that. But what went wrong with Jim Knowles when everything seemed to finally go right?
I think it started with the Oregon game, obviously, in the regular season, where the defense, it was almost like the opposite of the Michigan game, where I'm sure if you asked anybody on the defense after the Michigan game, they're like, we did our job. Like, the offense couldn't do anything. And eventually if you're a defense, you can only hold for so long. It was the exact opposite. I'm sure behind closed door, the offense, and we heard like there was like some, I'll get to this in a second, that there was maybe some things said. The offense felt like the defense lost that game for them. And now I know Will Howard, I know what happened at the end of that game, but and Jeremiah Smith with the controversial offensive pass interference. I get all that, but I think it started then because I had heard that, I don't know if he was called on the carpet, however, whatever phrase you want to use, but that Ryan Day got on Jim Knowles a little bit after that game. And like the relationship was never fully repaired after that. And, he started talking up Matt Guerreri and some of the assistant coaches for the job they did. So I think it just soured from there. I think if Jim Knowles, when he came to them, or his agent, I didn't like the timing here. I understand business is business. I didn't like the timing the week of the national championship game, his agent, like trying to do this stuff. I think if Ohio State just would have said, yeah, we'll do anything to keep you, he would have stayed. I don't think it was ever a fractured relationship, or I can't imagine they would have won the national championship. It was certainly a strained one and a surprise. It wasn't a shock by the time it materialized, Justin, because as you know, like there was so much smoke. And then once there was finally fire, we're like, okay, well, it wasn't a surprise. But if you would have told me, let's say after they beat Oregon or right after they beat Texas, let's say, that they're going to win the national title and Jim Knowles is going to go to Penn State, I would have been like, what? I mean, I guess anything in college football is possible. I never would have believed that, though. So it's pretty crazy. He goes out with a national championship at Ohio State. I would say he accomplished what he was brought here to do. Number 1 defense in the country. He had a ton of talent to deal with. Win a national championship. And then he goes and he leaves for Penn State. So it makes for great drama, that's for sure. But yeah, I don't think it was like a fractured relationship where it couldn't be repaired, but it was just because his agent was reaching out to Oklahoma as well, Notre Dame as well. And then Knowles reaches out to his home state Nittany Lions himself, if you believe the story. I'm sure Penn State doesn't want to get accused of tampering. So they're going to be, yeah, he just called James Franklin. And so, but I don't know. Knowing Knowles, I can see him doing that. I always liked my conversations with Jim Knowles, and we'll see. Except for one game a year, maybe I'll root for him.
Look, he's a DC that helped build a national championship team.
Right.
Just losing him and then losing him in conference, regardless of who Ohio State got to replace him, is that a problem? Is a defense without Jim Knowles, that was a guy that helped lead them to a national title last year, is that a concern? Is that a problem?
I'm very bullish on the Matt Patricia hire, so I don't think it's a problem and we're going to find out. I know a lot of people. That's one that everybody's got a different opinion on. I think Patricia's going to do really well. I'm very aware of the fact that he was a bad head coach with the Lions, but we can talk about the list of good college head coaches, even great ones like Nick Saban, Urban Meyer, Steve Spurrier, that were bad. Saban wasn't a terrible NFL head coach, but Urban was, Spurrier was, and they're great college head coaches. And Patricia's not coming here to be head coach, coming here to be DC. So I think he's going to do a good job. But, I've seen some things I think are going to really help Penn State. And could, in that one game, affect Ohio State. So what's Knowles able to do now? And Drew Aller's talked about this. He's able to tell Drew Aller, this is exactly what our game plan was against you. This is what we thought you did well. This is why we're going to attack you. This is and Drew Aller obviously was not talking at Big Ten Media Days exactly what Jim Knowles told him, but he did say, it was very interesting to get to, hear the perspective from Ohio State's defensive coordinator, now our defensive coordinator, on what I did well, how they thought they could attack me, basically my strengths and weaknesses and everything in between. So it's giving Drew Aller, who I've been critical of, I think he's a good quarterback. I think he's a little overrated. I think that could help him a lot. And just, but I don't think Jim Knowles is going to have all these crazy secrets about Ohio State's offense. He'll help a little bit with that. But it just makes it interesting, man. But I think Matt Patricia is going to do a really good job. And not just because of what he did before he came to Ohio State, but everything that I've seen and everything I've heard since he's been here. Now he's replacing 8 starters, very young group, but talented, but replacing 4 starters on the D line, all who were drafted. He's got his work cut out for him, but and I love the schedule for Ohio State, man. I mean, there's no there's no time to just kind of ease into the season. You jump in with Texas, and you still have at Illinois is going to be tough. You get Penn State at home, at Michigan. I love it, man.
Dave Biddle, Bucknuts with us here. Last thing on the way out. So, you look at Penn State. I saw the preseason poll came out this week, and Penn State's ahead of them. Penn State's interesting. I think of Michigan 2 years ago. They had all the pieces they needed, but you had a head coach who had a reputation of not being able to win big games consistently enough, and they get over that hurdle. All the returning players, experienced roster. Harbaugh, Michigan wins the national championship. Look at last year, Ohio State. They returned a ton of players. They have a head coach has a reputation of not being able to win big games consistently. They go on to win a national championship. If you follow that trend, that's Penn State. They're stepping into that same mold. They return a ton of players, and they have a head coach who has a reputation not being able to win big games consistently. Penn State's ahead of Ohio State, number 2 in the AP preseason poll. Obviously, a lot of people are very high on Penn State, as we should be. But how good are they? Are they truly a team that we can look at and say, man, it's been Michigan, Ohio State carrying the Big Ten for so long. Is Penn State, can they step up and legitimately contend for a national championship right now?
Yes, I think they can. They're very talented. And I've been one of the people who says, is James Franklin really going to win a national title? Can you win a title with Drew Aller, who's a good quarterback, but maybe isn't, can't really trust him in big moments, but maybe as a senior, things will change. And I really like both of their coordinators. The offensive coordinator they brought in last year, Andy Kolonicki from Kansas. I think he's a really good offensive coordinator. Look how much Kansas dropped off offensively after he left. And then you bring in Jim Knowles. So I think he's done a good job with his coordinators. They're talented. They lost 2 great ones, we know, in Abdul Carter and Tyler Warren, but they brought everybody else pretty much back. And you're right. It's that same blueprint of Michigan, Ohio State, Penn State. And I've heard some people say, well, that's just lazy because Michigan did it, their Big Ten, and Ohio State did it, their Big Ten. And so, but it makes a lot of sense because what are they doing? They're following that blueprint perfectly. It's bringing your own guys back, filling in some blanks with the portal, not turning over your roster. I'm going to get this guy. They got a really good receiver in the portal with Pena from Syracuse, who's Kyle McCord's top receiver last year. So, yeah, you look at Phil Steele's ranking. Phil Steele has them predicted to win the national championship. You look at his player rank or his position rankings, Penn State's near the top in almost all of them. Clemson's the other one that's near the top in a lot of those position rankings. So, yes, they've got the talent. They've got the depth. Do they have the head coach? I don't know. Do they have the quarterback? Maybe. He's definitely talented. But they've definitely got the talent to do it, and they've got the offensive and defensive coordinator to do it. So they're going to be a problem. And Ohio State and Penn State won't play for the next 2 years after this one, which is interesting. They played every year since Penn State's joined the Big Ten in '93. So Penn State has to come to Columbus this year. Man, that's going to be a big-time game. We could have a situation, if Ohio State's able to take care of business against Texas and at Illinois, and games it could be tricky, like at Washington, at Wisconsin. We could be headed for a situation where Ohio State plays 2 1-versus-2 games at home. At least coach's poll is 1-versus-2, I believe, for Ohio State and Texas. So that'd be cool. I'm getting way ahead of myself. But yes, to answer your question, Mr. Kinner, Penn State does have what it takes, I think, to win it. I'm not predicting they will, but they do have the pieces in place to do it for sure.
You mentioned the possibility of 1-versus-2 multiple times, hopefully. Both of those noon kickoffs. Where are you on the noon kickoff debate? I talked to Keith Byers. I've asked a lot of former Buckeyes. They give you that player, coach speak. It doesn't matter. We'll play at 8 a.m. Okay, that's fine. I'm a fan. I'll watch it too. I'm looking forward to Ohio State, Texas, but I'm not going to pretend that Ohio State, Texas under the lights just doesn't seem to carry more weight than at noon. But that's where we're at. It's a media rights deal. Completely understand it, but it does seem like Ohio State fans are getting hosed more than anything else. Maybe the players don't mind it. Maybe the school doesn't mind it. Maybe you don't mind it, but I do feel like fans at a certain point are like, we're kind of, Ohio University, the Bobcats. Wow, can't wait to go watch them under the lights. That's kind of the MAC is the only people that seem to be benefiting from the big noon kickoff deal. Where are you on this? Is this a big deal? Is it just fans talk, or where are you with the big noon kickoff?
The Texas game I have a problem with, and just being selfishly, typically I like the noon games covering the team because then I'm able to not be working till 3 a.m. I'm able to get home and watch at least the night games, and it's nice. But for the Texas game, for a multitude of reasons, it's just bad business. And you can say, well, the ratings are going to be great, and they will be. But that's a straw man. Whatever the ratings will be at noon, and they'll be great. They would be higher if they were in prime time. There's no doubt about that. I think we'd all agree on that. Furthermore, I'll be shocked if it's not like at least in the low 90s with heavy humidity here on the last day. I know I'm not breaking news to anybody in Dayton. It's the same thing. Last day of August in Ohio. I mean, just look at the last few years how it's been. And so that's another reason having it at noon just doesn't make a lot of sense to me. This should be a primetime game. The other ones don't bother me as much. Penn State should be a primetime game. I like 3:30. 3:30 to me is the sweet spot, Justin, especially later in the year, after the time change. That 1-2 Ohio State game in 2006 felt like a night game because it pretty much was in the second half, right? I mean, it was dark. If it's at 5 o'clock, if it's dark, it's a night game. Yeah, man, I think 3:30 is ideal, but Texas should be a night game. And Ohio State should not – they can't do anything right now because the contract is the contract. But when it's time to renegotiate, Ohio State needs to throw their weight around. What does that mean? They're not going to threaten to leave the conference, but there should be something in writing where Ohio State can only play X amount of big noon games per year. They're not only carrying it for the Big Ten, like teams that never have to do it, but they get the equal share of the pie. Big 12, Fox has a contract with Big 12 too. I mean, it's like just Ohio State is the one, and it's understandable. I'd be doing the same thing if I had Fox and I had this contract. But yeah, Ohio State's getting the shaft for sure.
Yeah, it's like I'm not mad at Fox. They're doing. I mean, good for them. They hit the jackpot when they got that deal done. But yeah, it's every time a big game and a kickoff time's announced, it's always a big debate, no doubt. Dave Biddle, Bucknuts, awesome enough to give us some time. You also hear Dave every Sunday, again on host. He's a host of a show we carry right here on the money. So we appreciate him doing that. But yeah, you hear Dave all the time on our station, especially with football picking up. You and Scotty. This is the fun time, right?
Yeah, it is fun doing it with Scotty. I know, and it's awesome. We got to get both hours on there on your awesome station. I know just our first hour's on, and yeah, we do it every Sunday and on the money. And we talk a lot of Ohio State football. Obviously, I'm the host of the show. We're going to talk a lot of Ohio State football, but yeah, we talk a lot of sports gambling too.
All right, there you go. Dave, appreciate the time as always. It's been a while, but we appreciate you giving us some time. Dave Biddle, Bucknuts, appreciate it. We'll talk soon.
Thank you, Justin. Appreciate you having me, man. All
right, it's the Justin Kinner Show presented by Frickers, 937-518-1410, the number to call and jump in on the conversation. We'll be right back. All right, and we are back. The Justin Kinner Show presented by Frickers. Frickers, your home for fun, food, sports, and spirits. Live here on a Wednesday. Reds are playing early today. We're going to hand it off to the Reds Radio Network coming up here shortly. If you missed that conversation with Dave Biddle, we'll hit that again coming up here in a few. One thing was interesting. So Ohio State, again, this is why I asked Dave this question. So Jim Knowles, defensive coordinator for Ohio State. Ohio State had one of the best ranked defenses in the country last year. And I see a lot of people just absolutely trying to diminish the job that Jim Knowles did. I wasn't a big fan of the Jim Knowles hire when it happened because I thought with Ohio State's defense being as poor as what it was for many years, going to the conference that is just known for embarrassingly bad defenses, it wasn't going to move the needle for me, and it didn't move the needle early on. And I think Jim Knowles' defense was very good early on. I didn't even think it was good early on of last year. I mean, we watched the first time they played a good team last year. Oregon put up 30-plus points. But Dave brought up an interesting point that I think is something that we're going to see less of. Ryan Day fascinates me now moving forward. Like, how is Ryan? It's one thing how we as fans view him, but what about his coaching staff? How does his coaching staff view him? So everyone knows around that Oregon game, all the drama that, we're hearing about these big meetings, the coaches' passionate outbursts happening in the locker room. Ryan Day, just a change of attitude, everything. Ryan Day basically calling out their defensive coordinator last year and losing him to, of course, Penn State. You have to wonder if when Ryan Day, of all coaches, who everyone was questioning of whether, it didn't matter that he had won 90% of his games. The 10% of games that he was losing was always against good teams. So when you look at the fact that, you look at the good defensive coordinators, or you look at the good coach, the help that he's had on his coaching staff, it's not a surprise to me that Jim Knowles and others, when Ryan Day called out Jim Knowles, that Jim Knowles looked at Ryan Day probably saying, I know you're not calling me out. Ryan Day, who was continuously up until last year, dropped the ball. Multiple losses to Oregon before ultimately pounding Oregon in the Rose Bowl. Losing to Missouri. You know what I mean? Like losing to Michigan at the time 3 straight times, now 4 straight times. Like Ryan Day had not technically accomplished much of anything. They had missed the playoffs multiple times. They hadn't won the Big Ten championship in years. And Ryan Day is looking at Jim Knowles saying, you got to be better. No wonder drama started to take over in that locker room, because I don't think anyone in that locker room truly overly respected Ryan Day. I think people like Ryan Day. I think they semi-respect him, but I don't think, if Nick Saban looks at his defensive coordinator, if Jim Knowles is Nick Saban's defensive coordinator and Nick Saban looks at him and says, pal, you got to be better, I think Jim Knowles says, yeah, you're right, I got to be better. If Urban Meyer's the head coach at Ohio State and he looks at Jim Knowles and says, Jim Knowles, you got to be better, I think he says, yeah, you're right, I got to be better. I think that Ryan Day now winning that national championship is so big and so huge, because when you're a head coach that's still trying to prove something, it's really hard for you when you're trying to prove something, trying to prove that you could win big games, trying to prove that you are one of the best coaches in college football. When you haven't proven that yet, and then you're trying to look at your coordinators who have proven that they're good at their job throughout their tenure, it's really hard for them to look at you and say, okay, buddy, whatever you say. And I think that's what happened. I think if last year's problem happened this year, I think it's handled completely different. I think that if a defensive coordinator like Jim Knowles would have been scolded by Ryan Day this upcoming season after winning a national championship, I think Jim Knowles says, you know what? You're right. My bad. I got to be better. I just don't think he respected Ryan Day a year ago. I don't think a lot of coaches did. And I don't mean that to stir the pot or to say that, like, maybe respect isn't the right word, but maybe Ryan Day just didn't have the clout in that situation to do it. Ryan Day has been a coach for a while, but every year losing big game after big game after big game, losing the game after the game after the game, getting beat by Missouri, getting blown out by Oregon, getting blown out by Alabama in the national championship game. Like Ryan Day hadn't done anything either to justify being able to look at someone else and say, I'm your boss. You got to do what I say. You got to do better. I just don't think he had the respect of that locker room or those coaches. I think now that he's won a national championship, I think it's completely different. I do. I think it's completely different. I think that now Ryan Day, national championship winning head coach, someone's not doing their job and he lights into them. He has the respect. He has the clout. He has the ability to get that through. So I think that was an interesting talking point there. The drama that happened last year. He didn't like being called out by Ryan Day. I don't think he respected Ryan Day doing it. Basically, what have you done? Now Ryan Day's done something. He's a national champion. So we'll see. Can Patricia, lead this defense to carry this team while they figure out what they're going to do at quarterback, while they figure out how to get these running backs, to take on a heavy load, especially with the losses of Quinshon Judkins and Trevion Henderson? Man, oh man. Ohio State, Texas, August 30th. We're Dayton's radio home for Ohio State football and basketball, by the way. But we're all about football. We'll be right back. If you missed our conversation with Dave Biddle, we'll get back into that more when we come back.